They say the old house at the end of Willow Lane is alive with whispers, but no one dares to listen. I remember the first time I stepped through its creaking door, the air thick with dust and secrets. Shadows danced in the corners, flickering like candle flames, and a chill wrapped around me, as if the very walls were breathing. I could feel eyes watching, not from the windows, but from the darkened hallways, where memories lingered like cobwebs. The floorboards groaned beneath my feet, echoing the stories of those who had come before. Each step, a reminder of the lives once lived within those peeling walls. They say at midnight, if you stand in the parlour, you can hear the soft sobs of those who never left, their sorrow weaving through the night like a haunting melody. And if you listen closely, you can hear them calling your name and whispering ghost stories. Chapter 1. Shadows over the ancient village. The village of Boylan lay deep in a valley surrounded by towering mountains. The natural scenery here was beautiful and peaceful, with lush green fields stretching out, winding dirt roads, and a small river flowing through the village, carrying the gentle sound of water like an unspoken song of the earth and sky. However, this beauty could not hide the eerie silence, as if the village was hiding something terrible. The village had only a few dozen houses built from wood and bamboo, with red-brown tiled roofs faded by sun and rain. These houses were close together, forming a communal area where everyone in the village could easily see each other every day. Life here seemed peaceful, but behind closed doors, whispers and fearful glances revealed that everything was not as it seemed. A girl named Mina, orphaned since childhood, grew up with the love of the villagers. Although she had no blood relatives, Mina was raised in the embrace of the community. She lived alone in a small house on the edge of the village near the river, where her parents once lived. With her beautiful appearance, long black hair, expressive large eyes, and gentle smile, Mina became the girl every young man in the village desired. Mina was kind and good-hearted, always willing to help others. She was the first to arrive whenever the village needed assistance, from harvesting crops to caring for the sick. Anyone in the village who faced difficulties only needed to call Mina's name, and she would come immediately. For Mina, life was simply about helping others, working hard, and enjoying the small joys of daily life. However, beneath her strong exterior, Mina carried a deep sadness, a loneliness she could not share with anyone. That fateful night began like any other, with a clear sky and a bright full moon illuminating every corner of the village. The golden moonlight reflected on the river, making the water shimmer as if covered with a thin layer of silver. Mina left her small house carrying a bamboo basket and headed towards the river. She often liked to go to the river in the evening to wash her face and reflect on life. The gentle sound of flowing water and the quiet of the night always brought her a sense of peace she couldn't find elsewhere. But that night, the river and the moonlight did not bring peace to Mina. As she bent down to wash her face, an unusually cold wind swept by, making her shiver. She felt as if someone was watching her from the darkness. She looked up, glancing around, but saw only trees and weeds, with no sign of life. However, the feeling of unease did not leave her. Shortly after, as Mina was about to return home, a group of men emerged from the darkness. They were men Mina knew very well, men from the village she had known since childhood. But today their eyes were cold and full of lust, completely different from their usual friendliness. Mina sensed the danger, but could not have imagined that her life would end in a horrific nightmare, right in this familiar place. The group of men began to approach Mina slowly but threateningly. She tried to run but couldn't. One of them lunged at her, grabbing her wrist and pulling her down to the ground. Mina's heart pounded wildly, each beat feeling like it would explode in her chest. She struggled, screaming for help, but her cries were drowned out by the men's savage laughter. The entire village was deep in sleep, and no one heard the desperate screams of the beautiful, unfortunate girl. In that dark night under the silver moonlight, Mina was brutally raped by those she once trusted. They took turns dishonoring her, transforming her from an innocent, pure girl into a lifeless, ravaged body. Her tears fell to the ground, mingling with blood and sweat, creating a grotesque mixture. But even as her last breath ceased, Mina's nightmare was far from over. Obsessed with their perverse satisfaction, they continued to torment Mina's lifeless corpse. They trampled on her cold, stiff body, tearing apart her clothes and stripping away whatever remained of her. With no humanity left, they dismembered her body into small pieces, trying to erase all traces of their crime. Her blood soaked into the earth, staining the riverbank red, as if the entire river was weeping for her tragic fate. After committing their heinous crime, the men carried Mina's body parts to the house of Olin, a middle-aged man who lived in seclusion at the edge of the village. Olin was notorious for his dark magic and evil rituals, and he had often used his sorcery to enrich himself. When he saw Mina's dismembered remains, Olin showed no fear or disgust. Instead, his eyes gleamed with a dark ambition. Olin knew that the blood of a wronged virgin would bring immense power. With Mina's blood, he could forge a vengeful spirit, filled with supernatural strength. If he could control the vengeful spirit, Olin would possess an incredibly powerful weapon to serve his dark schemes. He began the ritual, using ancient incantations and mystical ceremonies that he had mastered over the years. Olin's chants echoed through the dark house, blending with the murmurs of the night wind and the eerie laughter that seemed to come from afar. He mixed Mina's blood with herbs and charms, creating a horrifying concoction. Olin closed his eyes, focusing all his energy on the ritual, attempting to control Mina's spirit and turn her into a tool to obey his will. But the ritual did not go as Olin had planned. Mina, though dead, was still filled with intense hatred. Her fury towards those who had wronged her was too powerful, preventing her spirit from being fully controlled. The vengeful spirit of Mina could not be subdued. Instead, she became trapped in the village where she had endured unimaginable suffering. The flaws in the ritual cost Olin his life. He was devoured by the vengeful spirit on the spot, his soul torn apart and vanished into nothingness, leaving behind a dry, soulless corpse on the floor. Though Mina's vengeful spirit was trapped, her power continued to grow over time, becoming a terrifying force. The villagers discovered Olin's mysterious death and began to realize that something terrible was happening. They found signs of a dark ritual in his house, but no one dared to speak of the truth they had witnessed. Fear and guilt enveloped the village. Everyone chose silence, hiding everything to avoid being drawn into the nightmare they had helped create. As time passed, the village grew more and more ominous. Strange and brutal deaths began to occur, signaling the presence of a vengeful, supernatural force. Mina had become a vengeful spirit, and she would not stop until she had avenged those who had wronged her. Every night, under the moonlight, her mournful cries echoed from the forest, seeping into every house, every dream of the villagers, trapping them in the nightmare they had a hand in creating. Chapter 2. The Virgin's Curse of Revenge. The village of Violin became shrouded in a heavy, ominous atmosphere of guilt and fear after Mina's death. Those who played a part in the brutal killing of the young girl could no longer sleep peacefully. By day, they tried to act normal, but at night, when the moonlight seeped through the dim windows, an invisible terror enveloped them, plunging them into horrific nightmare. The first sign of the curse began with dreams. Those who participated in Mina's assault were haunted by gruesome visions of her. In their dreams, Mina appeared as a ghostly figure, her once bright eyes now dark and hollow, filled only with deep-seated hatred. She stood in the fields, by the riverbank, or in the depths of the forest, places where the moonlight never reached. She spoke no word, simply stood silently, her gaze fixed on those who wronged her, making them feel the impending punishment. The dreams grew increasingly terrifying. Not only did Mina appear before them, but she also made them feel physical pain, as if she was torturing them step by step. On some nights, a few woke up with bruises on their bodies, as if they had been beaten or strangled. They shared their experiences with each other, but no one dared to speak openly. Fear kept them silent, convincing themselves that it was merely coincidence, that the injuries were self-inflicted in the panic of their dreams. However, it wasn't long before those terrifying dreams became reality. One of the men involved in Mina's death was found dead in his home. His death was far from ordinary. His entire body was contorted, his eyes wide open in terror, as if he had seen something horrifying before taking his last breath. His throat was tightly clenched, but there were no signs of an attacker. The only trace left was the faint imprint of small fingers around his neck, fingerprints that the villagers immediately recognized as belonging to a woman. Similar deaths followed. The second man drowned in the river where Mina had been assaulted and killed. Despite being a strong swimmer, he was found dead, his body entangled in the weeds at the bottom of the river, as if someone had dragged him down. On the water's surface, a faint trail of blood stretched from the riverbank, where Mina had fallen to the spot where the man died. Another man was found in the forest, hanging from a branch by a rope, his feet just inches from the ground. It appeared to be a suicide, but everyone in the village knew it wasn't the truth. The rope around his neck was an old one, made from the material used to bind bundles of rice, a type of rope that only Mina used when she was alive. His body bore bruises once again, as if he had been tortured before his death. Horror spread throughout the village. The strange deaths didn't just stop with those who had directly participated in Mina's murder. Their family members, wives, children, and even neighbors became victims of the curse. It seemed that anyone connected to Mina's death was haunted and punished by her. The deaths continued, each one more terrifying and gruesome than the last. The villagers began whispering about a vengeful spirit. A ghost returned to seek revenge for the suffering she had endured. Stories of Mina and her tragic death spread, amplifying the fear. Those still alive among the men who harmed Mina were now in a state of panic. They knew well that what was happening was the result of their crimes, but none of them dared admit it, fearing that the truth would only hasten their demise. Mina, in the form of a vengeful spirit, grew stronger by the day. Her hatred deepened, and she relentlessly spread terror among those who had wronged her. By day she remained a hidden spirit, but by night she appeared as a ghastly figure, her eyes glowing red like fire, her long black hair cascading down, covering her entire body. She roamed the village, searching for those who had wronged her, and she would not stop until they had all paid the price. On some nights, eerie laughter echoed across the fields, along the riverbank, through the deep forest, and into the village houses. It was Mina's laughter, filled with resentment and sorrow, like a curse that could not be undone. Even those villagers, not directly involved in her death, could not escape the haunting. They lived in constant fear, unsure if they would be the next victim. The village children began to have nightmares, telling stories of a girl with long hair, glowing red eyes, and a ghostly smile. She stood beside their beds, whispering curses into their ears before disappearing, just as they woke up. Those children often woke up in a panic, screaming and too frightened to go back to sleep. Their parents dared not tell anyone what their children had seen, fearing that mentioning the vengeful spirit would only make her stronger. Faced with this terror, the villagers fell into despair. They had once thought that hiding the truth would help them avoid the consequences, but now they realized that guilt could not be concealed forever. Fear paralyzed the village, bringing all activity to a halt. No one dared leave their homes after dark. Village meetings became eerily silent, and rumors of the vengeful spirit spread like wildfire. Chapter 3. Repentance for Sin. The elders of the village, those who still believed in the gods and supernatural forces, began advising the villagers to seek out a powerful shaman to suppress the vengeful spirit. But no one dared to take the initiative. Other shamans in the region, hearing about the vengeful spirit, refused to come to Violin. They knew that once a vengeful spirit was born out of deep resentment, subduing it would be extremely difficult and dangerous. An old man in the village, who had witnessed many horrific events in his life, decided that he could no longer remain silent. He proposed that the villagers hold a grand ritual, praying to the gods and spirits to appease the wrath of the vengeful spirit and to protect the village. The old man, with his face full of wrinkles and eyes filled with deep concern, stood in the middle of the crowd. His voice was hoarse and trembling as he suggested holding a grand ceremony, hoping to calm the vengeful spirit and to ask the gods for protection. "We have made a mistake," he began, his voice deep and solemn as it echoed among the villagers. "We have committed evil, and now we are suffering the consequences. Only the gods can save us. We must hold a grand ceremony, plead with the higher powers to forgive our sins, and pray for Mina's soul to find peace." His proposal was met with agreement from many in the village. They understood that their actions had led to the village's current state of horror, and this might be their last chance to rectify the situation. Men, women, and even children all came together to prepare for the ritual. The villagers began gathering the necessary items for the ceremony. They collected rare herbs from the forest, plants known for their ability to ward off evil and bring peace. They erected a large altar in the center of the village where the ceremony would take place. The altar was decorated with white flowers, symbolizing purity, and large candles lit to guide the spirits. Beside the altar, a large incense burner was placed, filled with sticks of incense that each villager would like to pray. The old man asked everyone to bring their most valuable possessions, heirlooms, small statues symbolizing the gods, all of which would be offered during the prayer. The atmosphere in the village became heavy and tense. Everyone understood that this was not just an ordinary ceremony. This was their last hope. If the ritual failed, the curse of the vengeful spirit might grow even stronger, and no one in the village would escape death. On the night of the ceremony, Violin was enveloped in an eerie silence. The full moon shone brightly, casting a cold silver light over the village. The villagers, dressed in traditional attire, gathered around the altar. They bowed their heads, their eyes weighed down with anxiety, and began to pray. The old man, taking the role of the ceremony leader, began reciting ancient prayers in a hoarse yet resonant voice. Each word he uttered seemed to echo through the air, blending with the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, creating a chilling harmony. One by one, the villagers approached the altar, lit incense, and whispered their own prayers. They begged the gods to forgive the sins they had committed, and prayed for Mina's soul to be freed from its torment, so she would cease her vengeful acts. But as the last villager lit their incense, a strong gust of wind suddenly swept through, causing the flames of the candles to flare up fiercely before extinguishing completely. Darkness quickly engulfed the village, with only the faint glow of the burning incense remaining. The air grew colder, and a sense of foreboding spread among the people. In the dimness, a soft yet terrifying sound began to emerge from the depths of the forest. It was the eerie laugh of Mina, a laugh filled with bitterness and sorrow. The villagers held their breath in fear, realizing that the sound was gradually approaching them. From the edge of the forest, Mina appeared in her form as a vengeful spirit. Her long black hair draped over her body, her eyes glowing red like fire, and her skin pale as a corpse. She slowly walked towards the altar where the villagers were gathered. Each step she took seemed to tear through the silence, causing everyone to shiver. The old man, despite his fear, tried to maintain his composure. He stepped forward to confront the vengeful spirit, though he knew deep down that she was no longer human. "Mina, we do not wish to harm you," he said, his voice trembling. "We only want you to find peace, so that everyone can live in harmony." But Mina did not respond. She only looked at him with eyes full of hatred, as if all the prayers were nothing but meaningless noise to her. She raised her hand, and immediately another strong gust of wind blew, knocking over the incense burner on the altar, scattering ashes and sticks of incense into the air. The villagers were terrified, but no one dared to move. They stood frozen, as if paralyzed by overwhelming fear. Mina took another step forward, and the extinguished candle suddenly reignited, but this time with a cold, blue flame. The old man understood that the ritual had failed. Mina had become too powerful a vengeful spirit, and her anger could not be soothed by mere prayers. He felt his heart pounding, his legs weakening, but he still tried to remain strong. "Mina, please stop," he pleaded one last time. "We will do anything to help you find peace. We will right our wrongs. Just please, stop and forgive us." But Mina was no longer listening. She was no longer the innocent, gentle girl she once was. The suffering, the humiliation, and the horrific death she had endured had transformed her into an unstoppable, dark force. She wanted revenge, and nothing could stand in her way. Mina raised her hand again, and instantly another powerful wind swept through, blowing all the offerings off the altar, scattering them to the ground. The statues of the gods shattered into pieces. The white flowers were torn apart, and the blue flames suddenly erupted, spreading rapidly throughout the village. The villagers panicked, fleeing in all directions to escape the flames, but there seemed to be no safe place. The houses began to catch fire, and the sounds of screaming and crying echoed everywhere. Mina stood amidst the chaos, her eyes never leaving the villagers, as a reminder that this was the price they had to pay. The old man, though exhausted, struggled to stand. He looked around, witnessing the horrific scene that he could not prevent. He knew he had failed, that there was no way to break this curse. In his final moments, he looked towards Mina, trying to say something, but before he could utter a word, a strong gust of wind suddenly swept him off his feet, hurling him towards the altar. His body struck hard, and he felt the pain before collapsing to the ground, losing consciousness. When the flames finally died down and the village of Bielin was reduced to ashes, a silence fell over everything. No one was left alive to witness the aftermath. Mina, in her form as a vengeful spirit, vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a desolate village with no survivors. It is said that from that day on, Biolin became a cursed land. No one dared to come near, fearing that Mina's spirit still roamed, seeking vengeance. The tale of the village and the vengeful spirit's curse became a haunting legend, passed down through generations as a warning of unforgivable sins. And every time the full moon shone brightly, it was believed that Mina's eerie laughter could be heard echoing through the night, a reminder of a restless soul and a village that was lost forever. Chapter 4. The Arrival of the Mysterious Youth Group. News of the mysterious and gruesome deaths in Biolin village spread like wildfire, quickly drawing the attention of paranormal investigation groups. Among them was a group of young enthusiasts with a passion for exploring eerie places, who decided to investigate the rumors surrounding the cursed village. A girl named Lily, who was part of a 6-member group, took the lead in proposing the idea to explore the infamous village. The others in the group enthusiastically agreed with her decision. Each member had their own reasons for joining the expedition. Some were driven by curiosity, others by a desire to prove the existence of the supernatural, and some simply wanted to challenge themselves. Leading the group was Adonis, a brave young man who firmly believed in the existence of supernatural forces. By his side was Lily, a smart and compassionate girl with an optimistic outlook. They were joined by 3 other friends: Hannah, a strong-willed girl with a resilient spirit; Marcus, a cheerful yet courageous guy; and Jackson, a skeptic who didn't believe in anything, but couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. Lastly, there was Amy, a quiet girl who enjoyed discovering new things. After gathering enough information from locals in nearby areas, the group decided to venture to Violin, a village now shrouded in silence and abandoned, to uncover the truth behind the haunting events. As the group approached the village, a cold, eerie atmosphere enveloped them, sending chills down their spines. The path leading into the village was overgrown with weeds, with no sign of life. The abandoned houses, with their crumbling walls and shattered windows, created a bleak and terrifying scene. Adonis led the group, holding a bright flashlight to pierce through the darkness. Though a bit anxious himself, he tried to stay strong to encourage everyone. As they stepped into the village, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched by an unseen presence. Everything around them seemed to be silently observing, waiting. Suddenly, a soft, eerie giggle echoed from the edge of the village, as if someone was mocking them. The sound sent shivers down their spines, and they turned around but saw no one. Adonis tightened his grip on Lily's hand, feeling a vague sense of dread creeping in. "We need to be careful," he whispered, his voice strained with tension. "Something is watching us." They continued deeper into the village, trying to remain calm, but the air grew heavier with each step. Every footfall carried a sense of unease, as if they were walking into a nightmare with no escape. As they neared the house in the center of the village where Mina once lived, the creaky door mysteriously swung open, as if beckoning them inside. The interior was dark and cold, with walls covered in mold and broken furniture scattered everywhere. The smell of dampness and decay hung in the air, making the atmosphere suffocating. Hannah noticed a beautiful gold bracelet behind the broken fence, covered in dust. She quickly glanced at her friends, realizing none of them had noticed it. Quietly, she picked up the bracelet and slipped it into her backpack. Adonis stepped inside first, followed by Lily and the others. As the last of them crossed the threshold, the door suddenly slammed shut, startling everyone. They tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge, as if held fast by some invisible force. In the eerie silence, a soft sigh broke through, shattering the oppressive quiet. Suddenly, bone-chilling, a gust of wind swept through, making them all shiver. The light from Adonis's flashlight began to flicker, then died, leaving the group in total darkness. The ghostly laughter echoed again, this time louder, closer, making their hearts race. Suddenly a shadowy figure materialized in the darkness, with long black hair and glowing red eyes. It was Mina, now in the form of a vengeful ghost. The group was paralyzed with fear at the sight of her, unable to move, as if frozen by terror. Mina slowly advanced towards them, each step she took making a haunting sound. She stopped in front of Adonis, staring directly into his eyes, with a gaze full of resentment. Chapter 5. The Tragic Consequences of Greed. Adonis felt his heart pounding in his chest, but he tried to maintain his composure. "We didn't come here to harm you," he said, his voice trembling. "We just want to understand what happened." But Mina didn't respond. She only stared at him, a sinister smile spreading across her pale lips. Suddenly, she raised her hand, and immediately a strong gust of wind swept through, causing the house to shake violently. Debris from the ceiling began to fall, and everyone scrambled to avoid getting hurt. In the chaos, Mina's figure vanished, but her laughter echoed through the space like a threatening warning. When everything settled, the group realized that the door had reopened, allowing them to leave the house. "We need to get out of here right now," Jackson said, his voice filled with fear. "She's toying with us." Adonis nodded and led the group out of the house. But as they stepped outside, they realized the village was no longer the same. The surroundings had become hazy, as if they had stepped into another world, a world of darkness and fear. As they left the house, the group walked in silence, each person feeling the weight of the growing dread. They tried to find a way out of the village, but every path seemed distorted, leading them back to the same place. Mina's laughter continued to echo through the air, amplifying the fear that was building inside everyone. They tried to stay strong, but none could deny the panic slowly taking over. "We need to find a way out of here," Hannah said, her voice trembling. "We can't stay here any longer." But all their efforts were in vain. Under the control of the vengeful ghost, the village of Byron had become a deadly maze with no escape. They walked and walked, but could never find a path leading out. Every time they thought they had found an exit, the scenery around them would shift, bringing them back to the starting point. Then one night, while the group was resting after a long day of searching, one of their friends, Marcus, suddenly disappeared. He had gone out to gather more firewood, but never returned. The group, worried, split up to search for him, but found no trace of Marcus. When they regrouped at their campsite, they found a large pool of blood on the ground, and next to it was Marcus's shirt, torn and soaked in blood. Lily screamed in horror, while Adonis felt a deep pain in his heart. They knew that Marcus had been taken and killed by a vengeful ghost. From that moment on, fear and despair gripped the group. No one dared to leave each other's side, afraid of becoming the next victim. But no matter how careful they were, death continued to haunt them. In the following nights, 2 more friends were mysteriously taken by the ghost. Each time, they only found bloodstains and torn pieces of clothing, but never the bodies of the missing. Adonis felt immense pain and helplessness as he watched his friends being killed one by one. But he couldn't give up. Despite his fear, he knew he had to find a way to save the remaining members and break the vengeful ghost's curse. Chapter 6. A Love Takes Root. Amid the dark and haunting nights, Adonis unexpectedly encountered Mina again. This time, she appeared not as the vengeful ghost filled with hatred, but as a normal girl with mesmerizing beauty and sorrowful eyes. Gone was the terrifying figure of the vengeful spirit, replaced by a frail form as if she were bearing an immense burden of pain. Though Adonis knew she was the vengeful ghost who had killed his friends, he felt something different stirring within him. He was drawn to her beauty and the deep sadness in her eyes, sensing a strange connection between them. Mina didn't attack him. Instead, she quietly looked at him, her eyes filled with unspeakable pain. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice gentle but urgent. "This place is cursed. Everyone who comes here will die." Adonis felt his heart tighten. "Why did you kill them?" he asked, his voice trembling. "They didn't deserve to die." "You don't understand," Mina whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to kill them, but I can't control the hatred inside me. It's too strong, too painful. I just want it all to end, but I can't. Adonis looked at her, his heart filled with conflicting emotions. He knew this girl had endured unimaginable horrors, transformed into a monster by her own hatred and suffering. But he also knew that if the curse couldn't be broken, everyone in the group would die, and she would continue to exist in unending pain. "We can help you," he said, stepping closer to her. "We can find a way to free you." Mina shook her head, her voice full of despair. "No one can help me. I am cursed for eternity. My existence only brings death and suffering." But Adonis refused to accept that. He was determined to find a way to break the curse, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. Chapter 7. Can Love Break the Curse? Adonis returned to the remaining survivors in the group and shared with them his encounter with Mina. Although everyone was terrified and uneasy, they had no other choice. They knew that if they didn't find a way to break the curse, they would all die. Lily, with her kind heart, decided to help Adonis. She believed that somehow they could reach the vengeful spirit and help her find peace. On a dark night, as Adonis's group was attempting to perform the ritual to break the curse, the spirits hidden deep within the mountains attacked them. The battle was fierce, with darkness enveloping them and screams echoing through the night. Adonis fought with all his might, but he knew he couldn't hold them off forever. Finally, as he was surrounded by shadows, he saw Mina standing in the distance, looking at him with regretful, blood-red eyes. "Adonis!" Lily screamed, running towards him. But she was pinned down by the vengeful spirits, who seemed to want to take her body, and she couldn't reach him. Adonis knew his time was up. He turned back, looked at Mina one last time, and smiled. "I'm sorry," he whispered, before being dragged into the ground by the shadows, disappearing into the night. In the darkness before his death, Adonis saw the true forms of the vengeful spirits. They were girls with tattered clothes, their bodies covered in wounds as if they had been tortured many times, and some spirits had bodies that were chopped into pieces. Finally, Adonis understood everything. These were girls who had been humiliated and died unjustly, just like the one he loved. Adonis smiled bitterly, realizing the truth too late. Chapter 8. A warm heart can soothe scarred hearts. When everything calmed down, Lily collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, but she did not give up. With her kind heart, she continued to pray, hoping that she could reach Mina and end the curse on the village. Even though the vengeful spirits possessed her body, Lily's mind and heart remained focused on one thing: praying. She knew that if the spirits kept entering her body, it would shorten her lifespan and endanger her life, but she did not give up. Finally, after relentless efforts, Lily succeeded in reaching Mina and the other vengeful spirits. The vengeful spirit, in her weak and sorrowful form, realized that hatred could not bring peace to her soul. She decided to let go of everything and accept her fate. Before leaving, Mina returned to her former appearance as a young girl, with pure beauty and eyes full of pain. She embraced Lily, thanking her for helping her find peace in her soul. "I will never forget your kindness," Mina said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for helping me find myself again." Lily nodded, her heart filled with compassion. "You deserve to rest in peace," she said gently. "Go and find your peace." Mina smiled, then gradually disappeared into the white light, leaving Lily alone in the abandoned village. Chapter 9. The truth behind the kind heart. Lily left the village of Violin with an uncontrollable joy. She had helped free Mina's soul, and although the pain of losing her close friends remained, she didn't feel sad. She decided to return to the city and try to forget everything. But as she walked through the forest leading out of the village, she unexpectedly encountered a man approaching with a strange smile on his face. It was Odin, the shaman who had created the terrible curse. She recognized him as the shaman rumored to have died, because once, while in the village, she had found a diary believed to be written by the village chief. And that shaman was also her grandfather, who had disappeared many years ago after her father's car accident when she was just a 6-year-old girl. Odin looked at Lily with a knowing gaze and spoke in a deep and dangerous voice. "Thank you, Lily. You have completed your task excellently." Odin's smile grew even more joyful as he slowly approached Lily. "Now it's time for us to complete the final ritual." Lily replied, "All right, let's go, Grandpa." And she smiled at Odin. It was a smile mixed with a bit of anticipation, a bit of kindness, and a bit of malice. The darkness gradually swallowed the two figures as they disappeared into the gloomy forest.